And it looks like Vance will be joining us in just a second, which is awesome. Hope you guys are having a good day. There's the man. How are you, Vance?
Hey, what's up, Carey? Thanks for having me.
Good to see you, man. Here, let me get that all
Oh,
positioned.
so good to see you again. The last conversation we had, I guess publicly, was such a treat. And I told you that
Oh, yeah.
recently when we chatted, but it's been such a treat. It's put this bat signal up, I feel like, of kingdom entrepreneurs and movers and shakers, something that you've been doing for years. So it's a privilege.
Well, that last conversation was on my leadership podcast. It happened, what, in February, maybe it went live, I guess.
Yep, that's
And
right.
I got really interested. We got introduced by a mutual friend. I got really interested in your company, Overflow, because you are seeking basically how to get wealth out of people's stock portfolios and crypto investments and into ministry for the most part. I mean, you'll take on other philanthropic causes, but if you really think about that, I worked as a pastor for over 20 years leading a church.
Mm,
And to be honest with you, I never really thought about stock donations until the very end. And
wow.
part of that is you just don't think about it. You think people give from income, right? Rather than from wealth, or perhaps maybe when they die, they leave you a portion of their estate, which is always a mixed blessing. It's really nice to have, but there's a million churches with like huge endowments and no people. And
Yeah.
so give us a little bit, because this is big, by the way, we're going to be on for about 15 minutes if you're joining us. This is going to be an education in how to get donations from people's stock holdings, bond holdings, basically their wealth, not just their income, because people want to give, how to approach high capacity donors. And then we'll touch on crypto too, which these days is like, woo, 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 it's a roller coaster, mostly going down right now, right? So tell us a little bit about Overflow and how that started and what problem you wanted to solve.
Yeah, well, you nailed it. You said it just a bit ago. People want to give. And that's been
Mhm.
our conviction. That's been our revelation that ultimately, whether people know it or not, they're wired to give. They were created by God to give. And so, what we've been on mission to do is inspire the world to give by empowering them to increase the different ways they can give. Right. And so, that's been a big thing for us is really being focused on that. A lot of people think of giving from your wealth, so let's say appreciated asset like stock and crypto, as
Mhm.
a tax savings opportunity. And while that is
Okay.
true, um, and a lot of people, will participate in those ways because of the tax efficiencies, that's not the primary way we see people participating in the giving of appreciated assets. The primary reason we see people wanting to give from their portfolios, their stock and crypto portfolios, is because they have the revelation that they could give bigger from that pocket.
Right. In other words, maybe they do well. Let's say they make $100,000 a year or something like that. And I mean, you got to pay for gas, you got to pay for groceries out of that and everything. But perhaps they're sitting on hundreds of thousands, or in some cases, not always, but most churches have someone who's sitting on $1 million plus in assets, not just real estate, but investments, et cetera, et cetera. And they're like, I don't need all that money. I would love to give it, but it gets really complicated to give without technology, right? You and I talked about that on the podcast episode. I remember my final year when I was lead pastor, we got a very generous stock donation for just under six figures. It took us the better part of a year and into my successor's term to get all of the difficulties kind of worked out with it. It was almost impossible. So, yeah, tell us, number one, without something like Overflow, why is it difficult? And then how does Overflow solve that problem? What are you trying to do in the startup space with Overflow?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, the general premise is people want to give. When they realize they can give from different pockets, they get excited. But then it's not so exciting when they realize without overflow, they have to download forms, physically fill it out, and fax it in. It goes from elation to disappointment real
Literally
quick.
fax machines. Like you're not kidding, right? Like literally you have to use a fax machine.
Like literally, if a church, a ministry, a nonprofit asked their donors to give stock today, like literally in
Wow.
2022, they will need to download a form, print it out actually first, physically fill it out, and fax it in today. And
So
so
it's
that's the problem that we solve.
1986. It's
Yeah, yeah,
1986. Otherwise, right? Right? You weren't even born, but it's like 1986. And
yeah.
that's what we found. And this is so interesting. I was coaching some leaders yesterday, and they were giving me some of their problems. And it was just on volunteer intake, but the same thing works on finance. And I said, look, you got a choice. You can make it hard for the donor, or you can make it hard for the church. And I said, if you're going to ask the donor to like fill out a long form, I remember when we were setting, this goes back a decade, okay? But when we were setting up online giving, Canada has, I'm Canadian, you're American. Canada has some of the tightest financial regulations in the world, which is why our banking system didn't collapse in 2008. So that's a good side.
Wow.
Bad side is it's Fort Knox. It's a vault. So a
Yeah.
decade ago, in like 2012, 2013, my goal was to move from 30% online giving to 70%, but we had a bunch of hurdles. So I sat down with my team, charged them to go do it. They came back to me and they said, look, we've got to do like this 5-page form on the website. And I'm like, time out, time out, time out. First of all, nobody's filling out a 5-page form on a website. And so we sat around and we problem solved because we knew it was going to die on the table. Like nobody was going to do it. And I said, here, why don't we do this? How about you have a 3-field form on the website, Vance, Roush, phone number, email. There you go. Boom. Send it in. It's like Vance wants to sign up for online giving. Boom. He fills out that little form, took him 60 seconds. And then you get a form that says, hey, tomorrow someone from the church will call and will walk you through the setup process. And then what we did was we took those 5 pages of forms, we set up an appointment with you, and we did the hard work so that you didn't have to. And that got us from 30 to 70%, but you've taken it a step further. Now it's not hard for the church and it's not hard for the donor. Is that right?
That's exactly right. And I love what you shared there because a lot of what we're thinking about when we talk about the future of church and technology is how do we serve our congregation even better, right?
Yeah.
Technology companies think about it in terms of user experience, right? And in a lot of ways, there's opportunities for the church to serve their members in their congregation, like literally congregation members that actually want to that want to support
Mm-hmm.
your
Mm-hmm.
mission and vision. So I love that approach. And you're right. We took it one step further because we did direct integration with the brokerages and the banks themselves so that we can automate it even further so that the church or the nonprofit doesn't even have to do the legwork that you just described. But that's right. It's all with the heart of how can we serve?
So I got a couple of questions for you. What level of giving are you seeing released? If somebody, uses a solution like Overflow, the guy who's given 10,000 a year, what is not unusual to see that person, that man or woman release?
Yeah. So we did this study.
Mm-hmm.
It nationally in America specifically, the average gift through cash today is $128. The average gift through Overflow today is $10,000 in terms of participation. Yeah.
What is that as a multiple? Is that 100x? I don't know.
Yeah. So
1,000x? That's crazy.
it's 100x. People are disproportionately more generous with their wealth, obviously, with their non-cash assets, appreciated assets. Carey, I mean, this year we're on track to do over 100 million in total donation value, and we're not even 2 years old yet.
Wow. Wow.
People
And
want
how
to give.
much money is sitting in, wealth, in stocks, bonds, accumulated assets, crypto? How much
Yeah.
is available to give?
Yeah. So, I mean, let's talk in terms before the market downturn here in America.
Yeah, sure, sure, sure. Yeah. Or what time is it? Let's check again, right? Yeah.
Yes. I mean, the last I checked before this market downturn, the total market cap for US based securities was over 40 trillion.
With a T.
Yeah, with the T. And then one of the fastest growing asset classes, it's a bit zigzagging right now, but still at a new floor. Bitcoin is at a new floor. So crypto overall is well over $1 trillion market cap, even today. So this is just incredible opportunity, especially when you think about the fact that over 80% of philanthropic organizations, over 90% of churches specifically, don't even have a crypto wallet or a brokerage account. So even if they wanted to do this, they couldn't even do it because they're not set up infrastructurally to do it, right?
Well, it's the whole idea of trying to play bank, right? Like we don't do that particularly well. We're not set up for that. You're set up to do ministry. You're set up to lead your not-for-profit. A lot of pastors get intimidated. I saw a comment earlier on that said, I'm an XP. This is my life every day, she said. I'm like, totally. How does a pastor get unintimidated by the whole area of fintech and wealth management and crypto and everything? Because it seems confusing to a lot of people and a lot of leaders.
Yeah, a lot of the intimidation I feel like is faux fear. As I dig into more of these conversations and literally like one-on-one conversations that I've had with, hundreds of people at this point since we started Overflow, a lot of it is this faux fear that they might be seen as not smart, right? Or not educated. The reality is, as much hype there is about crypto, most people don't understand it. So you don't need to be intimidated. You don't need to feel like you're not educated or smart because most people don't understand it at all. They might pretend like they understand it, but if you can have the freedom and the permission to know directly from me, I live in the Silicon Valley. I used to work at Google. So you can have permission from me. Most people don't understand it. So just have permission to ask the quote unquote dumb questions, and be surprised by how many people are so willing to help. There's people in your church today that if you just put up the bat signal of what you're trying to learn and understand, there will be at least a handful of people that will approach you that want to dig in with you so that you can understand this space more. Obviously, I built a whole company around wanting to create education and empowerment. We write blogs on a weekly basis at this point, wanting to distill complex concepts in the financial markets, in financial technology and crypto specifically, in a way that a local pastor, a local leader can understand it. And so I think that's the biggest thing is just, letting people know for all the media hype there is about things like blockchain and cryptocurrency and NFTs, most people are not making money on it and most people don't get it. I'm just going to tell you.
Yeah, exactly. And it's sitting there and I've got a little bit in crypto and it's just sitting there and obviously it's lost a bit of value. But it's almost like that's money over there. It's not even real money. And if I can give that to a good cause or whatever, or you could get a gain on a market upswing, that's fairly easy to trade. A random question. You may not know the answer. I do not know the answer to this question. Do you know what percentage of the American population actually holds crypto? Is it like 2%, 5%, 10% would have some crypto? I'm just curious.
Yeah, globally, I don't know the US specific number, but globally, I believe there's 300 million crypto holders now globally.
Wow.
So what that means, that's the population of the US close to the population.
Well, I was going to say, even in an average sized church, you probably got more than a handful of people who are holding crypto.
Yeah.
Fair?
100%.
Yeah.
100%.
Yeah. And probably the majority that are holding stocks, probably of some kind, but it's a small value or a large value. Yeah. And often, this is something I've talked about on my podcast a little bit with you, with other guests as well, Vance, is I think a lot of the time pastors are intimidated to talk to high net worth individuals, but I also know talking to high net worth individuals, they are intimidated to talk to their pastor. They don't know what to do with it. They're not being discipled by anybody. So I'm going to tell you what I'd love to do. I can switch glasses for a minute so I can read the comments, but I would love to see if people have questions. Are you willing to take some questions?
Oh, I would love that. Yes.
Yeah. So if you got a question, just type it in the chat, type in the comments section, and Vance will take it. Vance is the founder and the CEO, co-founder CEO of Overflow. And basically what they do is they make giving easy. So they take people's crypto, people's stock, and they create a way to give it to your church really easily without using actual fax machines and quickly and at a very reasonable fee. So I think there were a few questions that came in. I didn't see them while they came through, but I would love to hear from you. The crypto, one person asks, the crypto stock people give, is that their tithe or above that or a combination of both? What do you think? What are you seeing in the clients that you're working with?
Yeah, so primarily the way that people are giving stock in crypto are towards catalytic campaigns, right? So think year-end giving, think capital campaign, maybe for a building or an expansion project. That's where we see most of the activity right now. I will say, though, that we are seeing an increasing appetite for people to want to give of their tithes and offerings in this way. And it's specifically for more of the sophisticated investor and the sophisticated donor. If they can actually give their tithes and offerings through appreciated gains, what we touched on a little bit earlier is that it is the most tax efficient way to give because they're going to give regardless. If they have the revelation of the tithe specifically, and not everybody has a revelation of a tithe, some people are on the journey and that's okay. But people that do have the revelation of the tithe, they're going to give regardless. It doesn't matter what pocket they give from. They're going to honor God with their finances and their resources. And so if they can actually give from appreciated gains, those capital gains taxes are protected. And that cash they would have given their tithe in anyways is now free. They can rebuy back their position and reset their cost basis. And so that's kind of a complicated method, but we are starting to see increasing appetite and people do that. I would say this is kind of going a little bit deep and might be nerdy, but all the executive pastors on here is going to love this when you watch this. You do have to consider that change in behavior changes the flow of funds timing wise. Because if somebody is going to give of their tithes and offerings and appreciated gains, they might do it all with one big lump sum, either at the beginning or the end of the year, right? Or for the totality of the year. And so that's just something to be aware of. We actually at our church see about a dozen people doing that right now. And we see it increasing. Yeah.
So they're not going to give $1,000 a week. They're more likely to give 50,000 and that's it for the year. Right?
That's right.
Which is fine. Okay, I don't know if you're at liberty to disclose this or not, but somebody asked, DC Seth said, what's the largest stock or crypto gift that an Overflow customer has received?
$500,000.
$500,000.
It wasn't, so this is cool too, Carey. It wasn't in New York and it wasn't in the Silicon Valley. It wasn't in Los Angeles. It was in the middle of America in Kentucky.
In Kentucky, $500,000.
Kentucky. Yeah, so this is not a phenomenon that is restricted to the coast. I hope that's encouraging to a lot of your listeners, Carey, and the people that will watch this later, is that this is not a phenomenon that's at the coast. If anything, specifically crypto, the mission behind crypto is actually to democratize access to appreciating assets, right? And so that is now available in rural areas as well as metropolitan areas.
Well, I was talking to Brett Hagler, our mutual friend, and I mean, is it El Salvador that's now crypto is the official currency? And he's in the process of trying to figure out how to fund housing for marginalized, unbanked people through crypto. Like you're going to see, and there are a lot of unbanked people in the US too. So that's an issue as well. Okay, Candace wants to know, how do I explain to my church why we need Overflow and what differentiates Overflow from other services, I guess, would be the question.
Yeah, so the average person that gives right now is in their 50s and 60s. And so if I can talk to local church really quick, it'll probably really resonate. 80% of the resources that is funding your mission and your vision of your church to serve the community is probably coming from your 50s and 60s in your church today. The average crypto holder is in their 20s and 30s. And so when we think about Overflow, and let's take Overflow out of it, when we think about educating and empowering our church around giving in these new ways, it's not a nice to have. It is a generational necessity. You are one generation away from not having sufficient amount of resources to be able to propel your mission and vision forward. And so you might not see the full ramifications of that tomorrow, but this is, here, and it's accelerating at unprecedented rates.
So here's a real life situation from Zoe. Zoe, thanks for your question. She says, what if our church currently accepts stock donations, but barely anybody gives that way? I'm sure she's not alone in that. Can you explain how Overflow would help with that and what makes it worth it?
I love this question because I always immediately jump onto the church's website. And so what the church website will say is, we accept stock donations. Email finance@church.org for more information.
Totally.
So a millennial goes to that page, and no millennial that I know will ever email the CFO of the church for more information of how to move assets. They just won't. We live in a Amazon generation. They literally want to click a button, connect their brokerage account, and be done with it. What's happening, the actual behavior that's happening, is when they see that call to action to email the CFO, number one, they're intimidated. And because they're intimidated, number two, they're saying, you know what? I'm just going to give cash, because they have a button where I could just give cash directly from my checking account. So that's largely what's happening. A lot of churches think that they're opening this channel, but they're not fully opening it because you don't know what you don't know. You don't know all the people that are seeing that call to action, intimidated by that call to action, and directing, otherwise.
Okay, great. We got one or two more questions. Do you have a couple minutes?
Yeah. Oh, this is fantastic. I love this.
Yeah. Okay, so when the church receives the crypto or the stock, do they hold it, or should they cash it, or would they cash it right away, generally into a checking or savings account?
Yeah, so we see most organizations have a policy that requires them to liquidate their assets immediately, right, upon receipt. And we help facilitate that process to minimize any volatility. I will say this, there are an increasing number of organizations that are taking more nuanced strategies with their boards. And so what this requires is that a board comes to what's called an investment policy. And our team can help with this if any organization's interested. But they would create an investment policy. For example, we have some churches that have an investment policy of they liquidate, but they reinvest back into ETFs. We have some organizations that have an investment policy where they hold certain top tier stock. And so it really is contextual towards your liquidity needs and the goals of your organization, right? You go to the highest level organizations like a Harvard, they are actually investing over $30 billion in endowments and markets and things like that. So it really, it spreads the gamut, and it's really dependent on your specific organization's needs.
Okay, well, Vance, this is super, super helpful. I love that you're leading there. Hey, I do need to disclose too, before this is over, I am an investor in Overflow. I'm not doing this because I'm an investor. I'm an investor because I care about the mission.
Wow.
But that's what you need to know. And I just think it's an incredible solution. And I'm really, really interested to see where this goes and how this helps. So Vance, if people want to know more about Overflow, they want to follow you. You're a fantastic leader to follow, by the way. I really enjoy getting to know you and seeing what you're up to. You also help out at your church. You were on staff there for a long time, and you have 4 kids under the age of 6. Is that right?
Yeah, that's right.
And running a Silicon Valley startup. So there you go. That's on a massive growth spike right now. So tell us where we can find you and more about Overflow.
Yeah. So on Twitter, LinkedIn, and here on Instagram, you just search Vance Roush. VanceRoush, and to learn anything about what we're doing as a company and how we can serve you, overflow.co, overflow.co. You can book a demo. My team responds within the day, and they can hop on a call if you need anything. We're here to serve.
Yeah. Vance, I so appreciate you. Vance Roush, thank you so much. And thanks everybody for joining us today. We're going to do these from time to time. But I just wanted to pop in the middle of the day and let you know a little bit about stuff that's on my mind, and trying to figure out how to finance the next generation of church is really close to my heart. And you've got people in your church who probably want to give. They just need a new way to do it. And hopefully, if Overflow is the right solution for you, Vance could certainly help you out with that. All right. Have a good day. Thanks, Vance. Thanks so much, everybody. We'll see you. Bye-bye.